They laughed at me like I was a stranger, not family, not the woman who once rocked them to sleep. Just a joke in a coat that didn't fit their idea of fashion. I didn't need a mirror to know what I looked like. I've worn the same wool coat every winter for almost 20 years. It's warm, it's sturdy, and it carries a story in every thread. But that night, it wasn't warmth they saw. It was something to mock. My name is Margaret Leland. I'm 72 years old, and until that evening, I thought my granddaughter saw me as more than an accessory to laugh about. I was wrong. It was her 25th birthday. The restaurant had been rented out, strung with gold balloons and little photo backdrops where guests could pose. I sat at a corner table, sipping tea, smiling at the bustle. I wasn't one for loud music and selfie sticks, but it was her night, and I was happy to be invited. Or so I thought. Halfway through the evening, she and two of her friends drifted my way, drinks in hand. "Oh my God, look at Grandma," one of them giggled. "Vintage vibes." The other tilted her phone, snapping a picture without asking. My granddaughter, Jessica, leaned in and said just loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "Don't mind her. She wears that thing everywhere. We love her, but yeah, she's old school." The laughter rolled over me like cold water. Phones were out now, capturing me mid-blink, my coat buttoned up because I get chilly in air-conditioned places. They weren't laughing with me. They were laughing at me. I could have said something sharp. I could have stood and demanded they delete the photos. Instead, I smiled faintly, the way you do when you know a battle isn't worth fighting on the spot, and placed my teacup down. "Enjoy your evening," I told Jessica, and then I left. The night air was cold, but cleaner than the air in that room. I walked to my car slowly, my hands deep in the coat pockets, feeling the worn lining under my fingertips. This coat had been with me since the year my late husband and I started the company. Back then, we couldn't afford much. I'd saved for months to buy it. Not because it was stylish, but because it would last. And it had. By the time I reached home, I'd almost convinced myself to let it go. Kids make bad jokes, right? Maybe it didn't mean much. But then my phone buzzed. It was a message from a colleague in another city. "Is this your granddaughter? You might want to see this." The video loaded slowly, my old internet connection taking its time. And then there it was. Jessica at her party, holding up her phone toward me, laughing with captions on the screen. "When your grandma's outfit is older than the company you work for." The post was tagged with our company name, clear as day. My chest tightened. Not just because of the personal jab, but because of the risk. We have a social media policy for employees, especially those in public-facing roles like hers, publicly mocking older people, tagging the company. That's a HR nightmare, and she'd just made it public. Another message pinged in from our COO. "Margaret, we need to talk. This is already getting traction. Clients have seen it." I stared at the coat draped over the chair across from me. 100 little memories sewn into its seams. And now, it was part of a meme. I knew what the policy said. I also knew this wasn't the first time Jessica had been careless online, but she was my granddaughter. Blood. The weight of both roles, grandmother and owner, settled on me like the coat on my shoulders. And as much as I wished otherwise, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't going to end at the party. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my kitchen table, catching on the edge of that coat. I'd hung it over the back of a chair, as if putting it in the closet might hide what had happened. But the silence in the room wouldn't let me forget. I sat with my coffee, fingers curled around the mug, and let my mind wander back nearly 5 decades, back to when the coat was new. We'd been running deliveries ourselves back then, my late husband, Robert, and I. No driver, no assistants. Just the two of us in an old pickup truck, hauling bolts of fabric from a wholesaler to small-town seamstresses who trusted us because we never shorted them a yard. The coat had been my shield against the wind in those early mornings, the smell of fresh cotton clinging to its wool. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest. Robert's gone now, 8 years this December, but the company we built together is still alive. We grew from a single truck to a regional textile and retail operation. When I retired from the day-to-day 5 years ago, I stepped back into the role of majority owner, letting a professional team run operations. The public-facing executives, the ones you'd see in interviews, weren't me, and I liked it that way. Even Jessica didn't know the full extent of my ownership. She thought her job in the marketing department was just another lucky break she'd earned by having a family connection. In her mind, I was just her grandma, with a weird loyalty to an old coat. At 8:15, my phone rang. The caller ID read, Alan Finch, COO. "Morning, Margaret," he said, voice clipped. "I assume you've seen the video?" "Yes," I answered. My tone was steady, though my pulse wasn't. "We've had 3 client complaints so far," he continued. 2 of them referenced the caption directly. The fact she tagged the company name, that's a clear violation of our policy. I took a breath. "What are you recommending?" "I recommend we follow the policy, same as anyone else," Alan said carefully. "But I also know she's your granddaughter. So, before we take formal steps, I wanted your input." It would have been easy to say, "Let's overlook this. Give her another chance." But overlooking things is how rot sets in. I'd seen it before, in other companies, in friendships, in families. And I'd promised myself, when I retired, that I wouldn't bend the rules for anyone, not even for blood. "Alan," I said, "you know I can't be part of any decision where there's a conflict. I'm recusing myself. HR handles it. You and Lydia take the lead." "Understood," he said, relief barely concealed. "For transparency, I'll send you the policy references and the preliminary HR notes. You should know, this isn't her first warning." When the email came through, I opened it with a knot in my stomach. There it was, in black and white. March. Written warning for tardiness. 5 late arrivals in 2 weeks. June. Counseling memo for failing to meet a client deadline after ignoring 3 reminder emails. August. Written warning for an inappropriate internal Slack message mocking an older client's typewriter habits. Now, September. Public video mocking older people, tagged with the company name. I set the file down on the table and stared at it. This wasn't just one bad night. It was a pattern, a habit of disrespect, especially toward people like me. People she thought were relics. I reached for my coat and ran my hand along the worn seam near the cuff. Robert's laugh came back to me then, deep and warm, telling me once, "If you build something worth keeping, you protect it, no matter who threatens it." That's what this was now. Protecting what we'd built, even if it meant hurting someone I loved. At 10:02, my phone buzzed again. A calendar invite, HR formal meeting, Friday, 9 a.m. The subject line was clinical. The meaning was not. Jessica had no idea what was coming. By Thursday afternoon, the air in my study felt heavy. I'd gone over the HR documents twice, then 3 times, hoping there might be some misunderstanding. But every line confirmed what I didn't want to admit. Jessica's behavior wasn't new, and it wasn't a fluke. That evening, Lydia from HR called. She had the calm, measured voice of someone used to delivering hard truths. "Margaret, I know you've recused yourself, but I want you to be aware of what we've gathered, strictly as a courtesy." I closed my laptop. "Go ahead." She spoke in that careful HR rhythm. Dates, incidents, policy numbers. Beyond the written warnings, they'd found 2 internal complaints from colleagues. One claimed Jessica openly mocked an older team member's handwriting during a brainstorming session, saying, "You write like my grandma. No wonder. Your ideas are outdated. The other reported she rolled her eyes during a client meeting when an older buyer asked for printed catalogs instead of digital links. And then there was the video. Lydia described it clinically. Content mocking older generations, tagged with the company name, amplified by comments from friends making similar jabs. It's not just an optics problem, she said. Legally, we can't ignore it without opening the door to claims of selective enforcement, especially given her prior record. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I'd built this company to last beyond me. That meant building a culture that respected every client, every generation, every worker who kept the wheels turning. If I made an exception here, I might as well carve a loophole into our policies with her name on it. But the thought of her sitting across from HR, blindsided, made my chest ache. She still thought she was untouchable, that her connection to me gave her a kind of immunity. She didn't realize the very thing she was mocking was the foundation she stood on. Lydia continued. We've scheduled the formal meeting for tomorrow at 9 a.m. Standard procedure. She'll have a chance to respond. Then we'll decide. I assure you, she will not know you've been briefed. That's how it has to be, I said. Treat her as you would anyone else. When the call ended, I sat in the quiet for a long time. The coat hung on the back of the chair across from me, as if it were listening. I thought of Robert again, his hands stained from dye work, his voice low when he talked business late at night. He would have been decisive. He would have said, protect the company. She's young, she'll learn. But he wasn't here, and the decision wasn't mine to make. Not officially. That was both a comfort and a torment. My phone buzzed. This time, a text from Jessica. Hey, Grandma. Thanks for coming to my party. Sorry if my friends were a little loud, LOL. Love you? I stared at it. No mention of the video. No acknowledgement of the public post. Maybe she didn't realize the damage, or maybe she thought it would blow over. I typed back. I love you too, Jessica. We'll talk soon. Then I set the phone face down. That night, sleep wouldn't come. My mind kept replaying the moments. Her smirk at the party, the click of a phone camera, the sting of laughter. And under all of it, a sharper thought. What if she doesn't just lose her job? What if she loses the chance to understand why this matters? By dawn, I'd decided one thing. I wouldn't interfere with HR, but if the worst happened, I'd be ready to speak to her directly. Not as the owner, not even as the grandmother she thought she knew, but as someone who had spent a lifetime earning a chair she didn't yet understand. Friday morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. My official role was board chair, but most days I worked from home. Today, though, I wanted to be in the building, not in the meeting, but nearby. I took the elevator straight to the top floor, bypassing the glass-walled HR conference room on the third. The door was already closed when I passed it. Through the frosted panel, I could just make out silhouettes. Lydia, Alan, and Jessica. I settled into my office, a private space tucked behind the boardroom, and tried to focus on the quarterly performance reports in front of me. But every few minutes, my eyes drifted to the clock on the wall. At 9:05, I imagined Lydia's calm greeting. At 9:10, the sound of chairs shifting. At 9:15, I pictured Jessica's crossed arms, the tilt of her chin. Later, I'd learn I wasn't far off. In the HR room, Lydia began with the formalities. Jessica, we're here today to review a matter concerning recent public social media activity and prior conduct. This meeting is part of our standard process. Jessica leaned back, arms folded. I know what this is about. The party video, right? It was just a joke. People overreact online. Lydia didn't flinch. The video was tagged with the company's name, and it contained remarks mocking older individuals. Several clients saw it and raised concerns. You've also had prior warnings related to professionalism. Alan slid a printed copy of the social media policy across the table. This applies to all employees, regardless of position or family ties. Jessica glanced at the paper, but didn't touch it. Come on. Are we really doing this? Half the people in marketing post memes. No one cares. Some posts don't carry our company brand or target a protected group, Lydia said evenly. Yours did both. Jessica's tone sharpened. So what? This is because my grandma saw it? She's making you do this? Alan's voice stayed steady. No one is making us do anything. The decision is based on policy and documented incidents. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the air vent. Then Lydia laid out the evidence, the client emails, the screenshot of the post, the timestamps matching her account, the prior warnings on file. Each piece stacked like bricks between them. Jessica's shoulders dropped, just slightly. I didn't think it was that serious. It is, Lydia said, her tone soft but firm. Given the pattern of conduct, the violation of policy, and the potential reputational harm, we have no choice but to terminate your employment for cause. Your severance will be in accordance with policy, and security will assist you in collecting your belongings. Jessica blinked hard, as if trying to process words she'd never imagined hearing. You can't just fire me. I'll talk to the owner. She'll fix this. Alan exchanged a glance with Lydia. The owner is aware of the situation and recused herself from the process to ensure fairness. This decision stands. Jessica pushed back from the table. Fine. Then I'll go find her myself. Upstairs, I heard the elevator ding, footsteps in the hallway. Quick, sharp steps I'd known since she was a child. My assistant glanced at me through the open door. She's here, she whispered. I closed the folder in front of me and rose from my chair, heart steady. I'd imagined this moment, but reality had a different weight. There was no anger, now. Only the quiet certainty that she needed to see me in the context she'd never connected before. The door swung open, and Jessica stood there, flushed and furious. I need to talk to the owner, she said. I gestured toward the chair at the head of the table. You're looking at her. For a second, she just stood there, blinking. It was as if the sentence hadn't made sense to her ears. You? The word came out half laugh, half scoff. You're the owner? I didn't move from my place at the head of the long walnut table. Yes, Jessica. I'm the majority owner of this company, have been for years. She let out a small, incredulous laugh. So you could have stopped all this. You could have told HR to drop it. I shook my head slowly. Number? That's exactly what I couldn't do. That's why I stayed out of it. Because the rules that protect this company, and the people in it, don't get suspended for family. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She looked around the boardroom, as if expecting someone to jump in, to say it was all a prank. The dark leather chairs, the tall windows, the framed photographs of early company milestones. They all stayed silent. I gestured to the seat across from me. Sit down. Reluctantly, she slid into the chair, her posture stiff. She kept her purse in her lap like a shield. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the polished wood. You've been here, what? 18 months? You've seen the campaigns we run, the clients we serve, the care that goes into every relationship. Do you think that happens by accident? She glanced down. No, but you thought mocking older clients online, tagging the company name, wouldn't matter. My tone was calm, but my words didn't soften. You thought it was harmless, maybe even funny. Her fingers tightened around the purse straps. It was just... I wasn't thinking. It was my birthday. People were joking. I let the quiet sit for a moment before speaking. The coat I wore that night? The one you laughed at? I bought it the year your grandfather and I started this company. We made deliveries in snowstorms, worked through holidays. We built relationships with people who still trust us today. Some of them are older than me. Without them, there is no company. Without them, there is no job for you to lose. Jessica's eyes flicked up to mine, then backed down. I know you didn't mean to hurt me, I said. But you did. And worse, you hurt the reputation of something much bigger than me. Her jaw tightened. So that's it? I'm just done? I slid a sealed envelope across the table toward her. It was cream-colored, heavy. Inside, you'll find 2 options. One is the path you're on now. Clean break, neutral reference, no eligibility to work here again. The other is a harder path. 6 months working for one of our partner non-profits serving seniors. Unpaid. At the end, you can apply for a position at a different portfolio company, if you've earned it. She stared at the envelope, like it might bite her. Why would you even give me a choice? Because you're young enough to learn, I said simply. And because I believe in second chances, when they're earned. Her gaze hardened. And if I say no, then you walk out of here today and start fresh somewhere else. I won't chase you. But you'll always know there was a seat you could have earned, and you chose to walk away from it. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice. She grabbed the envelope, but didn't open it. I'll think about it. I nodded. Do that. And remember, this chair doesn't belong to me because of my name. It belongs to me because I built what it stands for. If you want a chair like this, you have to build something too. She stood, her expression unreadable, and left the boardroom without another word. The silence she left behind wasn't victory or relief. It was the weight of knowing her next move would shape the rest of her life. Jessica didn't call that weekend. I didn't expect her to. Not while the sting of humiliation was still fresh. But silence has a way of stretching into worry when it comes to family. And by Sunday night, I caught myself glancing at my phone more than once. On Monday morning, Alan stopped by my office. She turned in her badge, he said, but didn't give an answer about the envelope. HR marked her as terminated with option for rehire pending owner's discretion. Good, I replied. Let her decide without pressure. Still, I wondered how she was spending her days now. The security of a paycheck is easy to take for granted until it's gone. That afternoon, I got my first clue, a message from a mutual acquaintance. A freelance designer Jessica had collaborated with popped up on my phone. Hey, I heard about Jessica. Sorry to say, but she lost that side project too. Client saw the party video and backed out. Consequences have a way of snowballing, especially when the internet is involved. By Wednesday, a text arrived from Jessica herself. Can we meet? We agreed on Thursday morning at a quiet cafe a few blocks from my house. When she walked in, she wasn't in her usual bright colors, just jeans, a sweatshirt, and hair pulled back in a loose knot. She looked smaller somehow, less certain. She set the envelope on the table between us. I've been thinking about this. I nodded for her to continue. I talked to some friends, she said. They told me I should just start fresh somewhere else, but I don't know. I keep thinking about what you said, about building something. Her voice wavered, but she didn't look away. If I take the second option, the non-profit work, what exactly would I be doing? Anything they need, I said. Delivering meals, teaching basic tech skills, helping with events. You'd see the people you joked about up close, learn their names, hear their stories. She shifted in her seat. Unpaid? Yes. It's not meant to be easy. It's meant to teach you something you can't learn from a desk. For a long moment, she stared at her coffee. Then she slid the envelope toward me. I'll do it. I didn't smile. Not yet. This isn't about pleasing me, Jessica. It's about deciding who you want to be. I know, she said quietly. And I don't want to be the person in that video anymore. The following Monday, she reported to the non-profit's small brick building on the east side of town. I'd spoken with the director, a woman named Carla, only to arrange the placement, not to script her experience. If Jessica was going to change, it had to happen organically. Her first week, she delivered meals to seniors in a weather-beaten van. The work was physical, lifting boxes, walking up narrow staircases, knocking on doors in the rain. She came home sore, and from what she later told me, more than a little humbled. One day, she mentioned helping a man named Walter fix his old flip phone. He said it's the only way he talks to his daughter, she told me. He didn't want a new one. He just wanted that one to work. I saw a flicker in her eyes when she said it. Something that hadn't been there before. Week after week, she kept going. She still had bad days. Days she complained about the work or rolled her eyes at the outdated filing system. But she also started bringing home stories about the woman who taught her to knit during a lunch break, about the retired teacher who still graded papers for her granddaughter's class just for fun. I listened, and I didn't say much. The lessons she was learning didn't need my commentary. They needed time to settle. At the 3-month mark, she sent me a photo. Her standing beside Walter, both of them holding the repaired phone. The caption was simple. "Thank you for making me do this." I saved it. Not to remind her later, but to remind myself that sometimes the hardest chair to sit in is the one where you wait and trust. By the 5th month, I could hear it in her voice. The sharp edges were softening. The defensiveness that used to lace her words had given way to pauses, small spaces where listening could slip in. One Sunday afternoon, she stopped by my house unannounced. She was wearing a plain cardigan, hair tied back, no heavy makeup. She looked lighter somehow. "I was in the neighborhood," she said, stepping inside. "I thought you might want some company." I made tea, and we sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd stared at her party video months ago. She talked about the non-profit's holiday drive, about visiting an older couple who'd been married for 60 years, how they'd insisted she take a jar of homemade jam for her grandmother. When she got to that part, she hesitated. "They thought of you before they even knew your name." It just made me think. I didn't rush her. I'd learned that letting her find her own words was more powerful than filling in the blanks. After a moment, she pulled a folded sheet of paper from her bag. "I've been working on this. It's an apology. For HR. For my old manager. For you." I took it, but didn't open it right away. "What made you write this?" She looked down at her tea. "When I started at the non-profit, I thought I was just doing my time, like it was a sentence. But then I started hearing these stories. People who'd lived through wars, who'd raised families, who'd built businesses from nothing. I realized I've been looking at age all wrong, like it's something to joke about instead of something to respect." Her voice caught a little. "And I realized I was wrong about you too. I didn't think of you as this, as someone who built something huge and kept it alive. I just thought of you as my grandma in the old coat." I smiled faintly. "And now?" "Now I know the coat's not just a coat." That night, after she left, I sat in my study and read her letter. It wasn't perfect. No 20-something apology ever is. But it was honest. She admitted to the harm, not just to me, but to the company's reputation. She acknowledged the pattern of behavior HR had flagged. She even referenced specific clients by initials, saying she regretted making them feel unwelcome. 2 days later, I forwarded the letter to Lydia in HR with a short note. "For the record, no rehire request at this time." I wanted the apology to stand on its own, not as a transaction for a job. By the time the 6 months were up, Jessica had become a fixture at the non-profit. She'd organized a technology workshop for seniors, helped secure a grant for their meal program, and, perhaps most telling, stopped checking her phone every 5 minutes during conversations. When we met for lunch to mark the end of her commitment, she surprised me. "I'm not sure I'm ready to jump back into marketing," she said. "At least not the way I used to. Carla offered me a part-time position here. Paid, this time. I think I want to take it for a while." I felt something warm settle in my chest. Not pride, exactly. Something quieter, steadier. If that's where you think you can do your best work, then do it. She nodded. And maybe one day, maybe I'll earn a seat in one of your companies. But I want to do it right, not just because of my last name. I reached across the table and gave her hand a light squeeze. That's the only way it counts. Driving home that afternoon, I thought about the envelope, the chair, the coat, all symbols of something bigger than themselves. And I realized the real victory wasn't in her choosing the hard path. It was in her finding out she could walk it. It was spring before I saw the family gathered in one room again. Jessica had invited me to a Sunday lunch at her apartment. Nothing fancy, just takeout containers spread across a big oak dining table. Her friends were there too, a few I recognized from the birthday party. When I walked in, Jessica's smile was the first thing I saw. "Grandma! Everyone! This is Margaret." She didn't say my grandma like she was explaining me away. She said my name like she was introducing someone worth knowing. I took my seat at the table, and right away I noticed the change. No phones, sneaking pictures without permission. No whispers behind cupped hands. Just conversation. About work, about the weather, about a stray cat she'd started feeding near her building. The noise was warm this time, not sharp. Halfway through lunch, one of her friends asked, "Is that the coat you wore in that video?" I glanced down. I'd brought it with me, draped over the back of my chair. Before I could answer, Jessica cut in. "It's the coat," she said, her tone firm but proud. The one her and my grandfather built a whole company in. The one I didn't appreciate until it was almost too late. The table went quiet for a moment, and I saw a few heads nod. That's when I knew. Her lesson had reached further than just her. 2 weeks later, I was in the office for a quarterly review. As I walked toward the boardroom, I noticed Jessica in the lobby with a group from the non-profit. She was introducing them to our COO, Alan, with the kind of confidence you can't fake. When she spotted me, she crossed the room. "We're here to talk about a possible partnership. Community outreach. Think your team would be open to it?" I smiled. I think they'd be foolish not to. We didn't mention the past. We didn't need to. The distance between who she had been and who she was now was visible in every word she spoke. That summer, she accepted a part-time role with the nonprofit's new senior tech initiative. She still did occasional freelance marketing work, but now she was selective, choosing projects that aligned with the values she'd learned the hard way. One afternoon, she dropped by my house unannounced again, this time carrying a garment bag. "I got you something," she said. Inside was a new coat. Still wool, still sturdy, but in a deep navy with subtle stitching along the cuffs. "For when the old one finally gives out," she explained. "I figured you'd need one for the next chapter." I ran my fingers over the fabric. "It's beautiful. But I think the old one still has a few good winters left." She grinned. "So do you." Months later, at a small family dinner, I found myself watching her pass plates, refill glasses, and ask my sister about her garden. The girl who had once turned me into a punchline now made space for others to be heard. As dessert was served, Jessica caught my eye and mouthed, "Thank you." I nodded, understanding the weight behind those 2 words. She wasn't just thanking me for the chance to fix her mistake. She was thanking me for not making it easy. People think power is about the big moments, the firing, the reveal, the chair at the head of the table. But I've learned it's about what comes after, about using that power to build, not just to punish. I wore my old coat home that night, not out of stubbornness, but because it reminded me of something Robert once told me, long before Jessica was born. If you build something worth keeping, you guard it, even from the people you love, especially from the people you love. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they learn to guard it too.